We wish them well. Nate Gladden says, I want to see a good season from Smithies, a full season of healthy veterans, and a side that dictates the pace on the edges of the forward pack.
Phil Tomlin. Oh, is it me? Is it?
Yeah, go on. It doesn't matter. Go on.
Phil Tomlinson says, more intensity, better start, more consistency. Everything else will take care of itself. Last season's start was woeful at best. Focus should be this year on so Saints don't run away with it again in the league.
And last one on this one, Sean Orler says, attacking flair, the new Los Galacticos are in town. Superstar signings embedding into a team of homegrown talent with an ex-halfback as coach. This will be a special season for Wigan. Bias much?
Well, come on. I mean, Sean does do the Wigan Fan TV programme.
I know.
It's kind of stamped all over him. Phil's another one involved in that. And Nate, of course, is another one of our podcasting friends from the world of Rugby League, doing the Rugby League in America podcast. So plugs all around for our friends there. In terms of Wigan, last year they finished second, but I think that was more to do with Warrington's collapse as much as Wigan's resurgence in the second half of the season. Even though Wigan were incredibly consistent in the second half of the season, only losing to St Helens and then to Salford in the playoffs. The listeners have them finishing in second place again this season. Obviously, we already know that none of us have them finishing the league in second place, but I have them winning the grand final. I've got them finishing in third in the playoffs, but then making it through those playoffs to win that grand final. Obviously, the star man to talk about is probably last year's star man of Super League, Jackson Hastings. He's the headline grabbing name in those games, but George Burgess,
now he's decided to turn up. Then, yeah,
there was never any doubt. There was only 5% doubt. 95% certainty. George Burgess is another headline grabbing name. Mitch Clark as well is going to bolster that forward pack, and Jake Bibby to round out the squad there as kind of Dan Sargent's replacement. I think we've replaced like for like across the board, and George Burgess is an upgrade on what we had before, and Bevan French if you add him to that mix too. My expectation for Wigan this year is that we become more of a front foot team, and I think those couple of forward signings add into that. I hope we're going to be involved in more high scoring games this season than we have in the last 3 or 4 years, but then the steel and fitness edge that we've often enjoyed over that 3 or 4 years is still embedded enough in this squad to come the business end, get us through to grand final glory. Bevan, we'll miss Sargentson, and I do think we'll miss George Williams as the year goes on. Everyone who thought George Williams wasn't good enough because he wasn't the best player in the world every single week, and or what have you, will realise just how great he was, even if Jackson Hastings is equally as good as George Williams has been for Wigan. We'll miss those guys, but they've been replaced with very good like-for-like moves, and success. Silverware, isn't it, for Wigan, like was said in some of the fan views there. I always say one of the 3 trophies is success for a team like Wigan, for a team like Saints, for a team like Warrington, for a team like Leeds who have enjoyed success. One of the 3 trophies is success, and I do think we'll win one. And my guess of the one we'll win, as I've said, is the grand final, because that's the one we tend to come good for. But I would love a cup win. It's been too long since we tasted Wembley glory. Hastings is my star man, but my rising star is Amir Baru, who's a young hooker. I think hooker's the one position that we will rely on youth for our depth as the season goes on. Yeah, I mean, have you guys got anything to say about Wigan? Where do you think we're going to finish?
I had similar. I had finishing third over the regular season and then getting to the grand final against Saints, but losing to Saints in that grand final. Similar sort of thing. I think a cup run is on the cards. So looking forward to that. My first Challenge Cup, and I'll be able to walk there.
Al?
Which I'm looking forward to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got third. I've got them winning the cup, but not making the grand final for me, because that tends to be the way that it works. Even though the final's a bit earlier this year. It'd be interesting for me to see how some of the likes of Smithies and Partington kind of how they go this year. as kind of upstarts last year and slightly unexpected how they if they continue to establish themselves in this team?
I can't expect anything but a continued rise of Morgan Smithies. That's why I've not put him as my rising star, because I think he rose last year. I think he's a first team player. I think he's a fantastic player. I've no doubts about Morgan Smithies continuing that this year with the attitude the kid has as much as anything else. The one big question for me is who plays where and against who, I suppose, because everyone kind of knows that Bevan French is one of the most electrifying players in the competition on his day, and putting him at fullback gives him a lot of opportunity to show that electricity. But then Zach Hardacre is one of the most on the field stable fullbacks that the competition have seen in the last decade, and so defensively he'd be sound there. But when we lined up against Leeds to start the game, it was French at fullback and Hardacre in the right centre, where he played for the Great Britain side in the winter. So I kind of think that's how we're going to predominantly go. But when we need to change things up defensively, maybe that's when Hardacre goes to fullback. But that's the question for me. I don't know if you guys have any views on that, or I don't know if you've seen French enough, I suppose, to have a view.
No, I mean, I like. Yeah, sorry, you go.
Go on.
No, you go.
What have you got?
No, you go. I think I haven't seen him as much as you have, obviously, and speed is obviously his biggest strength. All I'd say is it's nice to have that concern, isn't it, to not be worried about having someone to play there. At least it sounds like you've got a bit of flexibility in your back line.
And I like what I saw at the end of last season. I think he's got a moment or something special in him that will get talked about for a long time. You just got that feeling he's got that sort of particular skill and way of operating that he's going to conjure out something from nothing when you need it.
I'll never forget the 2010 season. Away at Warrington early in the season, and Warrington had been a bit of a bogey side for us in that period, especially away at Warrington. And Amos Roberts started the season at fullback, and he hit a short ball sort of towards the halfway line, but in our own half, hit that at pace, went through, scored, and I kind of felt that set things up. And I think French reminds me so much of Amos Roberts in the way he plays, and I agree, there will be a moment like that this season, I think, from Bevan French that'll make us think yes. Will make me think yes.
Yeah. I was going to say, this definitely isn't Wigan Fan TV, so let's move on.
So I was going to say it's turning into the Wigan League pod, isn't
it? Let's right. Okay, then before we move on to wrap things up, let's just recap our predictions. Then, we didn't mention Sarah has Wigan finishing fourth. She breaks the mould of the third, but I think that's because she had Hull FC finishing third. So we can't criticise that one, because I've done exactly what Sarah's done. Because I went for my team to win the grand final, Wigan. Sarah went for her team, Hull FC. You guys both went for St Helens to get grand final glory. We all think St Helens are going to lift the league leaders shield again, and hopefully celebrate it as well as they did in 2019 and put to bed those miserable scenes at the end of 2018.
I was optimistic about my team's chances.
And we all think your team are going to get relegated.
Yeah.
And let's
see.
I suppose
share those opinions.
Let's throw in a question on the spot. Who do we think is the first coach to not be in their position by the end of the year?
Ooh. That's a good question. Who are the sacking clubs?
For me, McNamara is the first guy literally on the chopping block.
Even though he just had a new contract extension in the off-season, despite a miserable second half to last year.
Yeah, that won't affect it. To me, he's probably gone mid-year.
I think there'll be an appetite at Hull to have a change if they start badly.
You mean like the bit they've had for the last 3 years?
Yeah, but this is the first time they've really invested in that side in that time. Since when they brought Connor and Kelly and a couple of players in 3 and 4 years ago, this is the first time they've reinvested again. And I think if they can't get this side to work, Radford's time might be up. So I obviously I think they're going to finish in the top half of the table, but that would be my bet. I don't like this sort of thing, Tim. Who do you think?
I'm going to say, well, the obvious one is Wolford. In some respects, that if they falter and look like, if it's conspires with some sort of miraculous Hulk AR resurrection, then it could be well Wolford. I'm going to go slightly out there and say it could well be Chris Chester as well. There's some, another team that's lingering around the bottom.
I would love it if a different change was made at the Huddersfield Giants that wasn't Wolford, that came between ownership and coach. I think that's where the question marks have to have been for this last period, because that stagnation with the squad, I don't feel it's on Wolford's shoulders. Last year he had big injuries to key players and had a team thrown at him that I don't think was up to it. The year before he came in and worked miracles. I feel bad for Wolford, but it's not a terrible shout. I know, top try scorer. That's a more positive one to end on before we wrap on. Who do you think is going to be the top try scorer? We'll start with you, Alan.
Good question. Let me think.
To buy time for you, last year's top try scorer was obviously Tommy Makinson, but he's starting the season with his injury that he picked up in the grand final. Second was Niall Evans, but he's lost his halfback, and joint second was Ash Hanley, who'll be playing outside a rampant looking Conrad Hurrell. So Ash Hanley would be my tip.
I'm going to go slightly left field and go Sasai Feki.
Oh yeah, if Shenton has a full season.
If Shenton plays anything like Shenton plays, let's go Feki.
Yeah. Tim?
Sean Kennedy-Dow.
Right, we've waited on long enough, so we're not doing a quiz this week. That will be back next Monday, the traditional SLP quiz. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what's to come in the next few shows. So before we do tell you about what's to come, make sure you go back and catch up on our testimonial player specials. Every Super League player that's been granted a testimonial year for 2020, we've done a special episode on. The only one yet to come is Danny Brough. We had some scheduling issues with getting Danny Brough on. I think he got double booked whilst he was away in the warm weather camp with Wakefield, so we'll have to figure something out to cover Danny Brough. But go back and listen. We've got interviews with Jermaine McGilvery, Liam Farrell, Lou McCarthy Scarsbrook, and Mike Cooper, and we also have an episode celebrating the career of Michael Shenton. So do go back and listen to those. Coming up, though, we'll do a show that'll cover the favourite Say What predictions for the year ahead, and we'll do the views of the Championship and League One fans as well about their side seasons to come. Alan, if you're on board, me and you are going to do that on Monday night's episode.
Sounds good.
We'll also be bringing you a show soon that'll run through the findings of our second running of the SLP Rugby League fan survey. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that the RFL annual fan survey is out, and
I have, but I haven't had this allotted 20 minutes in which to do it.
It's more than 20 minutes, I think.
Oh, my word.
It took me a while, and when I was going through it, I kept thinking, that's just asking the same question 4 times that we asked on our much more abbreviated fan survey once.
They should just listen to us then, shouldn't they?
Yes, so we'll be doing that. We'll be putting it in front of the RFL, because if they, last year, the first run in the fan survey in mid-season, the Super League responded to and showed some positivity for receiving the feedback from us. The RFL kind of palmed us away, but this year I'm going to send it to Simon Johnson rather than Ralph Rimmer and see if that hopefully gains a bit more traction. Of course, with the Super League season coming up as well, we'll be back to our regular Monday night slots soon. So recording Monday night, late Monday, early Tuesday release. That'll come up starting from next week. Make sure you do get your fan views into us that we talked about at the top of the show each and every week on every